Whose turn is it? Yours? There you go.
Hey, good evening, guys. Hey, I'm Officer Jacob Hernandez. This is my supervisor, Joshua Ruby. We're with the Downtown Safe Office with the San Antonio Police Department. Are you guys familiar with what SAFE is? Kind of heard about it somewhat? Okay. No? Well, it's San Antonio Fear-Free Environment, which I didn't stumble through this time, that tongue twister. But essentially, it's community policing. It's a very cool job. It's kind of nebulous in terms of we are all dispatched to certain neighborhoods. I have it, like my neighborhood in particular is in Southtown, but we are there for whatever the objective needs or subjective needs of the neighborhoods are. That could be anything from investigating narcotics issues, trying to help, especially in the downtown area with the homeless issue that we have and the crisis, as well as public education. So we get to do cool stuff like this, talk to you guys, and hopefully elucidate you as to whatever the topic that you're interested in involving public safety. The topic today is pretty dour. It's a pretty serious one in terms of its active shooter. I don't mean to inundate you and perpetuate you with fear. That's not the goal of this. Like the pastor said, this is an insurance policy. Kind of like my gun at work, I hope to never have to use it. But in the event I do, I do have a skill set. And that's hopefully what we can able to provide to you guys. This is a curriculum that's provided out of Texas State and San Marcos. The three major tenets of it are avoid, deny, defend, or run, hide, fight. But basically a skill set that you can rely back on should this you ever encounter this tragedy, right? With that being said, we'll go over kind of some context of what the active shooter profile is, police response. The second segment of it will be a stress response, how we as humans react to stress, hopefully how we can override our coping mechanisms and rely on that skill set. And then the last portion of it will really be those tenets and dive into what avoid, deny, defend really means. When I don't have my gun, I'm not a police officer, I'm just an average guy. Believe it or not, right, you guys look at me as the superhero, I know. No, but I mean, it applies to me, and I think it serves the community well. I mean, every time I go out to a big public event, it's in the public discourse now. It's in our consciousness that whatever our affiliation is, makes us a potential target. I feel more reassured knowing this information now, and I hope that you feel the same way. I'll let Sergeant Ruby take over from here.
I think you're a superhero, Jake. All right, we're going to jump right into it. We call it an active shooter class. Really, it's changed its terminology. It's an active attack class. We know through the history, Alert, San Marcos, they studied 660-something active attacks throughout the whole world. And all the stats, everything we get is coming from those 600 and some odd attacks. So this is sound study that we've gone through. And one of the things that we've learned is that the biggest part of the active attack, the goal of the active attack is really just attempted mass murder. That's the attempted as many casualties, as much chaos as possible. I tell you that now because we're getting ready to dive into kind of some methodology, and it'll come back. It'll come back. The attacker himself or the attacker itself, there really is no strict profile. We know they have an avenger mindset. They feel they've been grieved in some way, whether it's a real grievance or an imaginary grievance. Something helped trigger this, and there's usually a broadcast. A lot of times nowadays it's seen on social media, Instagram, Facebook, but it could also be person to person. It could be a coworker. It could be something else. It might be something very minimal at first, and then that grievance occurs, and now it's starting to escalate. Risk factors include a history of violence, exposure to violence, substance abuse, mental illness, and a history of suicide. Now, do any one of these things individually necessarily mean somebody's going to become an active attacker? No, it doesn't. But it's when all this stuff starts building up, and it can excel even into stalking and harassment. So it's one of those where if you know that I'm, for example, if I'm anti-gun or I'm anti-knives, or whatever the situation is, and I go up to you, man, look at this cool knife that I have. This is awesome. All right, not necessarily wrong, but maybe a yellow flag. And then my friend tells you, man, Sergeant Ruby, he's been drinking a lot lately. Yellow flag number 2. And then I come up to you, my boss just fired me. I think we need to take care of that. We would call that a red flag. So you can kind of see how it builds up individually. having a beer every now and then may not necessarily be terrible, but once it starts building up, and then you start seeing a change in their attitude, a guy or a person not normally interested in weapons, now all of a sudden has amassed a huge knife collection. Yellow flag number 2. Maybe it's a hobby, but then you couple it with that last part, right? You can start to see how it all builds. Already talked about stalking, harassing. Negative family dynamics, isolation, and then that last big one is others are concerned. One of the recurring themes we're going to talk about, if you see something, say something. So if you have concern, listen to that gut feeling. We're in church, God's probably trying to tell you something. Listen to that gut feeling, and we can start to address it. As we watch this video here, going backwards. As we watch this video here, you can kind of see throughout the country. Is it going? There we go. We can see throughout the country up to 2023 all the different types of attacks. The yellow dots represent gun violence. Red dots represent violence with a knife or other sharp object. And blue is all about the car. Small dots are less than 4 victims. Big dots are 4 victims or more. And again, this is just throughout the United States up to 2023. So now we know the safest place in the United States is in Montana. I blame that show Yellowstone. I think they don't mess around up there, so they take care of their business. But there's a very real possibility in one way or another we might be exposed. If you're only watching the news, and this is a question for the audience, if you're only watching the news, where do all active attacks take place? Somebody give me an answer. Somewhere close to home, in schools, right? That's usually what we see on the news. It's always happening at schools. It's always happening at schools. We know through the study that a majority, just under 50% of attacks occur at some sort of business. So how does that affect us? How many of y'all walk past a business or drive past a business or own a business? Right? Everybody does. We all do it. Whenever we go to a restaurant, there's businesses just right down the street from the church. Outdoors events is the next biggest one. You can see schools, number 3. And what do you think that other category is? Where we're at right now. Others include churches. The connection itself, you can see that 61% of these attacks, there is no connection. So how does that work? Well, we can say that John and Mary Doe that live 4 houses down get into an argument. One of them decides to commit murder, and we just happen to be having a picnic outside. We're happy to have a church gathering. What is the main goal of these attackers? Mass casualties. So they already know they're getting in trouble for doing the unmentionable to their family member. Now they're going to come over here to the church. That is where it starts to get concerning. That's how we can be impacted. Maybe not directly, but definitely indirectly. So if that was to happen, let me ask you this question, audience. How long would it take us to get there? How long do you think? Throw me a number. Oh, I hope we're faster than 20 minutes. How long would it take 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. National average is, I'm getting ahead of myself. National average is actually 3 minutes. So San Antonio, we're right underneath that. We'll talk more about that here in a second. Before we get too in depth, we're going to take a look at this quote up here. It says, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Why do I say that? We do 2 different case studies throughout the next 30, 45 minutes. People were killed in these case studies. But they're good examples of what we can do to increase our survivability. And I'm not trying to hate on the deceased. I'm not trying to be mean or disrespect them in any way. But what we say in the police department, we're learning from their sacrifice. So that way we can increase our chances of survival. These are all attacks that we know fairly well. We should all remember. Sutherland Springs and Uvalde are something that we hold close to our heart here in San Antonio because we deployed to both of those. Our SWAT team, our bomb squads, our negotiators deployed to both of them to help out the local resources. So what affects the number of deaths? And we kind of already talked about that. The big one is how quickly we arrive. We already established, ideally, we should be here in less than 3 minutes. We'll actually, in this area, we would beat that time because we don't just have local San Antonio PD or Bexar County, but we got Alamo Heights right up the street. We got Park Police over there by the zoo. We have Trinity Police. We have Incarnate Word Police. We have, in Bexar County, we got 65 different agencies that would all be responding to this location. So we would beat that mark very quickly. The other one we talked about is target availability. If we happen to be having a picnic out here, if we're happening to have a rummage sale, a fundraiser, a pumpkin patch, whatever the case may be, that target availability is going to increase that bad guy. I'm going to turn it over to Jake, and he's going to talk a little bit about how we respond.
Hey, it's me again. So we have some context background of like police response, the active shooter profile. Now we're going to kind of get into the physiology of what happens during stress. This happens to every human being, no matter how much training you have. And then we'll look at maybe how do we override that. So 3 stages of disaster response: denial, hey, like this isn't happening, there's no way that this can happen to me. Deliberation, okay, the acceptance that, hey, this is real life, what are my options from here? And then a decisive movement. And that can be the 3 main tenets: ADD, avoid, deny, defend. Can I avoid the situation? Okay, if I can't, can I lock down potentially? Okay, if that's the last option, then I can defend myself, right? So that should be our Rolodex. If some people are old enough to remember a Rolodex. Saying that in like schools to kids, they're just like, I have no context of what that is, mister. But those are our 3 options: avoid, deny, defend. So hopefully we can get through this denial stage. So denial is the first stage of no, it isn't. I always say that's like, I just went on vacation, I got back and I'm looking at all my emails and texts and I'm like, there's no way that I can have this much work. There's no way. I'm just gonna avoid it, right? No, it's very real. So we'll kind of go into this, this video. It's a social experiment. It's essentially looking at, on a micro scale, something that's not as chaotic, but that denial and kind of that herd mentality, if you will. Let's see, we'll go ahead and play. And do we have audio? No. Okay. So I'll give you the context. It's London, and they're going to have some actors that are playing sick on the streets. And they're basically looking like that John Quinones show.
Surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander.
That was loud.
When
You guys
people
awake?
are in a crowd, it's
Yeah, I
easier
am
to
now.
pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help! Help!
How long before he gets help?
Please, somebody. Help! Help me, son. Please help me.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please, somebody help me.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is 2 conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Or people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You alright?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit flicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
You want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You alright, yeah? Sure.
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm alright.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay.
And I thought, well, it's wet, so he must really be ill because he's going to ruin his suit anyway.
So again, like on a micro scale, you can already see that dismissive behavior that's going on. There's some intuition, like, hey, maybe this person is having a medical emergency. Maybe this person needs help, but I don't really want to get involved. You know, we blow that up onto a macro scale with the topic that we're discussing right now. I mean, you hear something like, hey, he's got a gun shouted, you hear screaming, it's December and you hear firecrackers, like middle of the day, the wheels should somewhat start be turning. And it happens to officers too, especially, I used to work on the west side around Culebra, Zarzamora. You would get officers that would hear probably gunshots, right? And it's like, that's probably fireworks. And it's like, or we should probably go investigate. You know, like look into that. At least formulating some type of a plot into how we're gonna respond, and hopefully we give that to you guys. So deliberation, the human brain is capable of so many beautiful things. That's like theology, metaphysics. We're avoiding all that higher education, right? Everything that we're talking about is that animalistic brain, that lizard brain, that run, hide, fight, and sometimes it ends up into freeze, right? That's a natural response. It happens to people. Again, we're talking about overriding that. And again, fight, flight, freeze. So fight and flight, you know, those are two of our options in this disaster response. So a little bit about human physiology, our stress response. I'm sure if you guys have had to give a speech like I am right now, that heart rate, you know that heart rate's increasing. You can feel that like salivating in your mouth, pupils dilating, those fine dexterity motor skills in your hands start kind of going out the window, right? So 60 beats per minute, are any of you guys avid runners? Anyone lower than 60 BPM here? Really? Bob, what are you at? 40, 45 beats per minute? Yeah. Dang, impressive. That's bragging rights. But as I'm talking to you guys up here, I'm probably more in like the 120 area, right? And that condition, we call it condition red. Hopefully we can avoid is that black, that 175 beats per minute. That's again the auditory exclusion, the motor skills going out the window. And you'll see it happen to officers. Like when we go out in calls and it's stressful, if we're wrestling with somebody where it's like, hey, handcuff him. And like next thing you know, the guy's fumbling with his handcuffs, can't get the car door open. So how do we get past that? How do you think you can get past that if you were in a stressful situation and you did have some time? Breathe. Yeah, it's so simple. I feel like the ShamWow guy when I pitch it. Like it's so simple, just breathe. So we call it, in the police department, we call it, it's not combat breathing, what is it now? Tactical breathing. I will remember that. But essentially those deep breaths in and those deep breaths out, right? A 4 count in and then pushing, exhaling out. That way we can get that heart rate back down, we can get some mental clarity, and I can rely back onto what I need to. So stress response, this is a robbery that's occurring in a grocery store right now. And you'll see some different responses. I do like the people running outside of the building. There's a woman laying down in the top. That's a form of hiding or defending, and we can talk about that strategically, how we do that, but we do want to avoid that. But if we go back, let's see it one more time. That woman with the baby stroller, you can tell just fumbling with that buckle. Again, stress is building up. She can't get it out. I mean, do you think it'd be better just to take the carriage and move? Right. Just stuff like that. And again, you see it. I remember one time I'll do some anecdotes to make this hopefully more interesting for you guys. But we had a stolen vehicle in downtown. The guy flipped over. So we were trying to, how are we going to extract this driver? At the same time, we're worried about, does he have a gun in the car? Is he going to start shooting through the window? So if you guys have ever been around a car window in the front, those things are reinforced pretty significantly. So we have like 3 officers in the front just hitting the window with their ASP baton over and over. Like, we're not going to get through that. And then finally someone's like, hey, break, time out. What if we try going through the top and opening the door? And it was like, all it took was like, again, we have 3 grown men, just tunnel vision, honed in on one solution, and one guy to be like, hey, break, breathe, try this. And it worked, right? And so there's gonna be somewhat contradictory info I'm giving you guys, because obviously if we're trying to make these decisions in real time, things are moving. It's life and death. So it is gonna be somewhat pump the brakes, accelerate, pump the brakes, accelerate, and taking that millisecond to reevaluate. So deliberation, we kind of see another example of like herd mentality. This isn't meant to besmirch anyone, but this is the Station nightclub fire. Are you guys somewhat familiar with that? Okay, some people do know. I'll give some context. It's like the late 90s. It's a rock venue in the Midwest. There's a band playing on stage right now. There are pyrotechnics, they malfunction, and they light the entire ceiling on fire. And you'll see how some people kind of respond. At the very back right-hand corner is the stage. Over here on this other right-hand side, you'll see like the entrance hall, the main hallway, and then at the bottom are some other exits. So the band's playing. And immediately that thing looks like it's malfunctioning, right? That would kind of make the hair on the back of our neck start to stand up. Like, ceiling shouldn't be on fire. And granted, there is like some room for forgiveness for these folks. Being in an environment like that, that's low light, very crowded, loud, it's extremely disorienting. But again, knowing what we know, hopefully we can already start to move. Hopefully, 2, we took a mental layout of what the venue looks like. I encourage everyone to do that when you're out and about, to have somewhat situational awareness. Look for those exit signs before you go into a venue. Look where your windows are. And I think a lot of this could have been avoided. And that herd mentality. So here's another diagram of the nightclub. On, I guess, my right-hand side, your guys' left, I should have said that earlier, but that's the stage. Down at the bottom is the entrance. It says the number 31 with some orange circles. Those are indicative of the fatalities. Unfortunately, you had a bottleneck effect where people died from smoke inhalation. Again, no one utilized those exits in the back, around the kitchen and around the bar. Eventually, and again, it took that reevaluation, that split second to realize right next to the main entrance was a ton of glass windows that someone threw a chair through, and people were able to escape that way. And that's kind of what I mean. If you're recognizing in a situation that something isn't working, don't waste your time trying to force a square peg through a round hole. Reevaluate. Breathe. So deliberation, how can we do this? Calm yourself, right? Breathe, try to center yourself, and shift your emotions. And what I mean by that is, instead of having that attitude of like, hey, this is happening to me, remember that, hey, we went through this class, I do have a skill set, I can survive. I'm not helpless in this situation. I can work as a team if I have my church members with me, right? And we can figure our way through this. We can fight our way through this. Another thing, stay fit, try to move around, try to do some type of, walk the dog occasionally. If you have a dog, if you're like me and you neglect him occasionally and you feel bad, that's my excuse to get him out and about. Another thing you can do is like what we call script, and there's a mental script. So for example, I go to a robbery call, I'm familiar with the building somewhat. As I'm rolling there and I'm driving, I'm thinking, hey, where are the entrances and exits? Where is most likely this guy gonna be? Where are my surrounding units? All this I'm picking. If I encounter the bad guy, what am I gonna do? If he takes off running, what am I gonna do? Right, so I have all of this so I'm not caught off guard. You can do this too, just like wherever you work, in your life, in your home. Hey, if there was someone in here, if there was someone in my house, do I know the layout? Am I comfortable with the layout? If there was an event here in the church, am I comfortable enough with the layout to know all the exits, right? The other thing we can do is practice it. And what I mean by that is like physically. So mentally I come up with this in my head of how I'm gonna respond to a robbery. The department has a village that we train at the academy where we can actually practice these things. What I tell organizations is, if we do have an active shooter drill, we may not do a full run through, but at least some type of evacuation plan. And that could be something as simple as like a fire drill, a natural disaster drill, something where we can like rendezvous and we can do a head count of everybody. So an example of this is Rick Rescrolla. He was a security officer at one of the entities within one of the buildings at the World Trade Center. The testimony from the people that he worked with was that he was kind of a fanatic, would kind of grill them about safety. The mall cop that took his job too seriously, right? So people kind of ha-ha'd him, but he would have them quarterly run through these drills of how are we gonna exit the World Trade Center as an organization. Well, the day hits, again, the worst thing imaginable, worst day in American history, some would argue. They have 100% survival rate for their entire team. In fact, Rick would end up going back into the building to try to extract more people, but succumbed fatally as the tower collapsed. A decisive movement, I don't know if this video will play great.
Friends were on a train bound for Paris when they heard a gunshot. Amid screams and commotion of the passengers, they quickly focused on a man wielding an AK-47. Almost instantly, one of them said, "Let's go," and the three ran toward the shooter. Those three friends are with us here today. Thank you, Alec, Spencer, and Anthony, for what you did on that train and for joining us here. And that's because after Alec said, "Let's go," he and Spencer and Anthony sprinted toward the gunman while he trained his rifle on them. Spencer tackled the assailant and the three worked to disarm him. As we know, Spencer was stabbed in that effort. After they knocked out the gunman, they tended to other injured on board before paramedics and police arrived.
So, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. The Paris train attack that occurred where 3 civilians on vacation, I think 2 were on leave for the military, 1 was their buddy. They subdued an armed gunman, right? I mean, these guys were on vacation, like guards down. As soon as they see that, they retreat back into the cart, they formulate a plan, and they execute that plan. They make a decisive movement. Reason that's included is when it's a tenant in the presentation of avoid, deny, defend, but it also kind of gives us an example that, hey, these are like ordinary people doing extraordinary things. We're all capable of being a participant in our own survival. Another example is Flight 93 on 9/11, right? Those passengers worked to subdue those terrorists. Fortunately, the plane did go down, but think of how catastrophic everything else would have been had they not saved more people with their sacrifice. So again, I just leave that you can override that stress. It's okay to feel fear, right? We all feel fear. I feel fear when I have to respond to something, but I have something I know I'm capable of, and I can override that and I can push through it. And that's what I hope you guys, instead of just freezing. And now we'll kind of get into the meat potatoes, and Sergeant Ruby will take back over.
Okay, so we talked about how we respond, right? We're trying to overcome that denial. We're trying to overcome the fight, flight, or freeze. So the first step of denial is don't deny it. Officer Hernandez gave a great example. It's now towards mid-November. Sunday's coming up during service, and all of a sudden we hear fireworks in the parking lot. That's not normal. We can all agree on that. Well, let's call it what it is. Hey, something bad is happening out there. We need to figure out what's going on. So if we hear gunshots, then we're automatically going to go to that deliberation. One of our options that we can deliberate on is whether or not we play dead. We're going to watch this video right here, and then we're going to kind of talk about pros and cons to that.
We heard the first shots at around 9:40 a.m. I was sitting on the wall of the classroom, so in the hallway, and I could hear the shots getting closer and closer very quickly. I mean, there was only a few seconds between the first time we heard them and when he actually walked in. To me, it sounded like an axe being taken to a piece of wood. And our teacher, she opened the door, and she peered outside, and she immediately shut the door, and she said, "Call 911." And right then, he walked in just seconds after. There's absolutely no time to think or to duck or to take cover, and people just kind of fell to the floor. And he immediately walked in shooting, and he went to the other side of the classroom, and he started going down the rows. He went down each row very quickly, very purposefully. And I remember thinking, your turn is coming. You're going to get shot. I mean, I didn't realize there was an active shooter, but I knew something bad was happening. He came back to our classroom 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he killed himself in the front of the class. In between each time he was there, you could just hear people crying and coughing, and the cell phone started ringing. When he was in our class, I remember trying not to breathe very much, so he couldn't tell I was alive. Because as my stomach was hitting the chair, I was thinking, you know, he can see me breathing, he can see me alive, and that was very scary. I'll never forget when the SWAT team first broke in at around 9:51. The officer in the front of the classroom said, "We have a lot of blacks in here." And at the time, I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, but he meant triage codes. And I remember looking into the girl to my right and realizing, you know, what black meant. He looked over me and he said, first he said yellow, and then he changed it immediately and he said red. And that's when I first started panicking. I still couldn't speak. I was shot 3 times, lying on my back. And I remember thinking, what do you see? Like, what can you see on me that I can't, that you would change me from yellow to red? He killed 12 people in my classroom, including our teacher.
All right, so did y'all catch how many times she got shot? 3 times. I don't feel comfortable taking 1 bullet, let alone 3. So let's talk about some other options. Before we get into it, she was a survivor from Virginia Tech, which is our other case study. We'll jump into that here in a little bit. And then as a point of clarification, San Antonio Police Department, we don't give out triage codes. If we get dispatched to something, whether it be 1 casualty or several casualties, that's all we say. We'll let the fire department make that decision. Most of us in here don't have the medical knowledge or the medical training to distinguish the two. All I know is, hey, this person has a hole, this person doesn't. So that's who we need to address. Does that kind of make sense? The other option, in addition to playing dead, is we can hide and hope. It is another option, but if we're going to do that, let's see how effective we can be as we're doing it. And then, so we got our deliberation. We have the bad guy that's out there in the parking lot. Shots go off. We know it's gunshots. We're assuming it's gunshots. We're deliberating on what are we going to do. We can play dead. Everybody lay on the ground. Probably a bad idea. We can hide and hope. But our first objective is to avoid it at all costs. Okay, so asking you guys real quick. Officer Hernandez hit on it a little bit ago. Where are the exits at in this room? Right? You guys immediately pointed over here, right? But we got another emergency exit back there, and then of course we have the main exit. So if we can, we want to avoid it at all costs. We want to get out here, we want to go, we want to run and call 911. Everybody's calling 911, agreed? We don't want to fall into the video that we saw earlier with the homeless people by saying, oh, somebody over there will call 911. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to call my wife instead. Somebody over there will call 911. I'm going to call my kids instead. Everybody's calling 911. That does a couple of things for us. One, it's going to let us know that there's something legit here. If we have 1 person call 911, unfortunately, people will call in hoax attacks every now and then. But now we have 100 people calling 911. FBI calls that a clue, right? Something is happening there. Maybe it's not an active shooter. Maybe it's a drunk fight in the parking lot. Maybe it's but something bad is happening there. We need to get officers over there. The other thing we can do is you can give us more intelligence on what's happening as we're showing up. So instead of saying, hey, there's an active shooter at the church, as you run away, there's an active shooter in the front parking lot. Now we know where we can start going. There's an active shooter that took off running towards the neighborhood to the south. Now we know where we can start coordinating our resources. Then we can get into deny. So we avoid, maybe we can avoid it. Maybe we try going over here, these doors are locked. Or maybe for whatever reason this door doesn't open. Now we need to work on denying him access. Do not let him come in here. And we'll get more into that. And then we can get into our defense and we'll get into that. So in this situation here, kind of pay close attention to this video. You're going to see a guy walk up. I think it's at a school meeting of sorts. And you're going to see a guy walk up. He's going to spray paint a big circle on the wall. And pay attention to how everybody responds, because you're going to see a couple of different responses here. In fact, you'll actually see all three of them.
And from the technology that knows it's on the chart that you have there, and it's part of the plan that we have, the workshop we're going to have following this meeting, but this would be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. A motion. Everybody in this room behind that counter hit the road. Please, certainly, everyone else leaves. Hey, sir. John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead. Ginger. No, Ginger. Ginger.
Alrighty, so we're going to watch it one more time. Can I get you to turn the volume down upstairs real quick? We're going to watch it one more time, and we're going to kind of critique all these people as they start moving around. So that still works. So the first thing, you're going to see the bad guy walk up. He has that gun in his hand. Pay attention to these two ladies down here, because you can see them going through that, what's going on? Is this real? Like, is that just happening? Meanwhile, you can see this guy back here. He says, man, we're not on the Titanic. Women and children first, not me. And he bolts. Like, he's out quick. Bad guy comes up. These two are trying to figure out what happened. This guy's gone. He sees that gun. He's out. She's trying to hide, give her credit. They're trying to avoid by crawling and getting out of the way. They're still denying. Finally, they decide to leave. And then this beautiful soul back here, she says, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to come back, which is a bad decision, by the way. And then she's going to take her purse to this guy. Right? Boom. She's okay. She got pushed down. He didn't kill anybody. He was upset about something else. But if you do decide to fight, we'll get more into this. If you do decide to fight like you're the third monkey on Noah's Ark and it's getting ready to rain. You know what I mean? So it works with this crowd. I tried that joke a while back and it was crickets. Crickets. Yeah, there you go. See? All right, so going back to avoid, run. Remember, avoid, deny, defend. The first step, avoid. We're still in our deliberation phase. Know your exits. Leave as soon as possible. This is the same grocery store we saw the girl with the stroller in earlier. So you see the bad guy come in with the gun. People are going to start taking off. And this one's funny because there's somebody up there that has no idea what's going on, and he just decides to bounce. Right? Herd mentality. He sees everybody running, he's gone. So avoid and run. Consider our secondary exits. We talked about our exits here. As we were looking at this picture up here, I know it might be kind of hard to see for some of y'all in the back. As we're looking at this picture here, do we have any secondary exits? If our bad guy is over there, this is the main store. What other exits do we have? The door and the ladder, right? Ladder right there, and then there's an emergency exit right there. If y'all can't see, we have two people right here. right? Officer Hernandez hit on it. Their heart rate's going up. They're going in condition black. They're freezing. They're just sitting there. They're hiding and they're hoping. Okay. So if we can take that deep moment to breathe, just like in Jake's example, and actually open up the door, if we open up our eyes and we see, man, there's an exit right there. We can get to safety. Even if this door is locked for whatever reason, we can get to a better safe place by getting on the roof. Is it 100% safe? No. Is it safer than where we're at? Yes. So we talked about denying. Maybe we can't avoid for whatever reason. Maybe the bad guy's coming in through here. Somehow he got in through the back. The bad guy's coming in through here, and we're getting bottlenecked up there. So we really can't get out. We're struggling. Maybe it's something else. Lock the door, lights out, and out of sight. Lock the door. That first one is imperative. 663 studies from around the world. Never once has a bad guy gone through a locked door. 0. And it's been reiterated most recently in, what was it, Michigan? The church in Michigan, the school in Evergreen, Colorado. Both of those, they locked the doors. The bad guy never got in. It's a simple, simple solution. Lights out. Let's try and make ourselves as inconvenient to get to. Okay? So if maybe it's a Monday, maybe it's right now, we don't have a church full of people, but we have a men's group going on. We have a women's group going on. We have childcare going on. Let's make us as inconvenient to get to by locking the door, shutting out the lights, make him think that there's other targets someplace else, and get out of sight. Then we can go into our deny, right? We already talked about locking the door, turning the lights out, but now we can start barricading. So as we take a look around, even just out here, what can we use to help barricade some of these doors? Chairs. This piano is on wheels. This is a heavy piano. We can use that, right? We have tables, we have the podium, we have all this stuff. If we take a look at those doors back there, and it gets pointed out to me all the time, those doors open out. So people say, hey, Sergeant Ruby, those doors open out. How are we supposed to barricade that? Remember, our objective here is to make ourselves as hard to get to as possible. What is the bad guy's objective? Mass murder. So if we make ourselves hard to get to, he will find an easier target. He's not going to want to climb over a dozen pews, a dozen chairs, and a piano to get to us when there's easier targets someplace else. Let's increase our survivability. Heavier, something that's heavy, great. More, better, and door stops. Again, it's an easy solution. So if we go back here, we have our code black boyfriend and girlfriend right here. Do we have anything else in this picture that we can use to barricade those doors? Whatever all that stuff is. Like we have a big thing of trash. I'm assuming that's trash right there. Can we set up trash bags, even if it's light? Is it making it hard for him to get to us? I don't like crawling over trash bags with a gun in my hand and trying to step and do all kinds of crazy things. Bad guys don't either. What was that? Well, again, they're going code black, right? If he's busy out taking care of easier targets, which sounds mean to say, I know, but if he's out taking care of other targets, man, and guns are loud. He's shooting, people are screaming, trash will be the minimum that we need to worry about. Any of y'all ever worked in a restaurant before? So I used to work at a restaurant, and one of the things I was in charge of was we had to change the soda in the soda fountains. For those of you who don't know, the soda comes in like a big, 10-gallon bag in a cardboard box. I'm pretty sure that's what this is. Can we use those carts and those boxes to barricade that door and, again, make us hard to get to? There's all kinds of things we can use. I know we got a lot of guys in here. How many of y'all wearing belts today? How many of my guys wearing belts? How many of my girls have purses with any sort of strap or anything? Right? Up there towards the back of the room, again, our 2-hour opening doors, they have those hinges at the top. Can we wrap our belts and stuff around those hinges to keep them from opening? Can we wrap our belts around the doorknobs themselves? Let's start thinking outside the box. Simple door steps for inward opening doors. So it'd be hard to use for there, but if we need to protect these kids, can we throw a couple door stops down there? That door opens inward, so we can put those door stops down there to give them an added level of protection. Talked about using ropes, a tension sleeve. I don't know if you can see what this gentleman's doing right here, but essentially you're taking your belt or your purse strap, you're wrapping it around that door handle, and you're trying to get an angle on it to use that momentum and use that as a force multiplier to keep that door from opening. Fire code says that any exterior door has to open outward. So maybe our bad guy attempted to get through there. Y'all were able to stop him. He got spooked. And now he's trying other entrances around the building. That's where something like this would come in handy. And again, I know for anybody that has questions, this is simple stuff you can find on Amazon. Figure out what kind of door you have and just problem solve it as far as maybe if you want to buy something. Now we're going to talk about denying and hiding, and we'll talk about this video next. We'll give it a second. Sometimes it might take a minute slow, but we'll give you a quick brief on this. In this video, they're interviewing a teacher from the Sandy Hook school shooting. And in it, she talks about, it's a pretty emotional video because she talks how she hears the shots. She's at the very first classroom from where the bad guy comes in. She locks the door, she turns the lights out, and she crams 20 kids, about 20 kids, into like a restroom for their classroom. And she talks about, man, she put one in the sink, she put one on top of the toilet, she put two right there on the seat of the toilet, she lined everybody else up. She's talking to them, she's trying to keep them happy. And everybody in her classroom survived, including herself. She gets into a little bit of what happens when the police finally show up and how they get to her. But the big part of that is the simple lock the door, turn the lights out, and hide is what saved those kids. So we worked on our denial. Maybe the bad guy's still coming through. Sergeant Ruby was wrong. This guy really wants to get in here. I don't know what happened, but he wants to get in here. Now we can start talking about our defense. Right? We have a saying on the police department. It's not the people that want to hurt us, it's their hands. So I would encourage you, if we see somebody coming in, we have to get a hold of their hands first. And that's exactly what's going on right here. Grab the gun, grab their weapon, grab their hands, and then we're fighting. Like I said, we're fighting like we're the third monkey on Noah's Ark, right? Shift your motions, step aside, move around. Let's see what we can do. If they come in right now, we would have no problem overtaking this person. But in addition to shifting our motions, we go back to what Hernandez was talking about. We're shifting our emotion. We're not going to, man, I guess this is my time. It's, man, we got to get home to watch football tonight. We got to get home to tithe on Sunday, right? That's what we're getting ready for. So we need to shift our emotions too. And here we're going to see this guy. He decides to go to the local 7-Eleven to get his wife some nice wine for their anniversary. Bad guy comes in and he says, you know what? I'm going to get home. This is what we're getting ready to do. And then we have this young lady back here that decides to faint. We already talked about playing dead. But anything you can use. So as we look at this video, we take a look around the room. What can we use as a weapon in this room? Chairs. This is a heavy Bible right here, I'll tell you that. Right? How many of y'all drove to get here tonight? How many of y'all drove? Maybe this is a question I need to alter. How many of y'all have actual car keys? Okay. There you go. If you have actual car keys or house keys, office keys. There you go. Car keys, house keys, work keys. Let's put those keys through our knuckles and we can start punching. That'll work, right? Whatever we can use at our disposal, we can start punching. Talked about shifting our emotion. This is Lieutenant Brian Murphy. He was a police officer. You can see that scar on his neck. He says, I'm not going out in a parking lot. I'm not going out like this. I'm not going to let my wife down. I'm not going to let my daughters down. And I'm not going to let my stepkids down. He's shifting his emotions. So as we pay attention to our surroundings, if there's one thing you take from this class tonight, it's this. Avoid, deny, and defend, or run, hide, fight. If you take another class, there's a couple of different classes out there, but they use both. They're all synonymous. Avoid, deny, and defend in that order. Man, you're awesome. She's over there taking notes. She says right there, avoid, deny, defend, ADD. All right, so what you do matters. Let's walk through the scenario. We're out there in the parking lot. We hear the gunshots. The attack starts. What's the first thing we do? Avoid, right? That's the first thing we do. Man, we're looking for our primary exits. We're looking for our secondary exits. Let's get out of here. For whatever reason, our exits don't work. What's the next thing we do? We deny him. So we can deny them access there. All of a sudden, this door opens up. Let's all get out of here. We're going back to avoid. And then our very last option is what? We're defending ourselves. Case study for Virginia Tech. I can't reiterate this enough. This was a very, very unfortunate circumstance, but we've learned a lot from it. We've seen the real-world applications of avoid, deny, defend, and this was a great lesson learned, I guess. Bad guy comes into Norris Hall. He chains up these doors right here. He chains up the back doors. He goes up to the second floor, and he comes down the hallway. Room 211, that's where that girl who got shot 3 times, that's where she was at. So bad guy comes down the hallway, comes in here, starts shooting, goes back into the hallway, comes back into the hallway, starts shooting. But what does that alert everybody else? Hey, something bad is happening. So they were able to lock their door. They were trying to lock their door. He bounced back and forth between these 2 rooms. And as these people in 207 were trying to lock their door, he was able to get the barrel of his gun in there and just kind of what we call spray and pray. He wasn't really aiming. He was just indiscriminately pulling the trigger. And that's why those front 4 and the teacher were killed. Eventually, they were able to get that door somewhat barricaded, and he couldn't go back in. If we look at 204, that square right there was a student, and he was trying to hold the door closed. He didn't know how to lock the door, but he was trying to hold the door closed. Bad guy shoots through the door, and his body ended up becoming a barricade. So he denied access. And that allowed everybody else in room 204 to escape safely with minor bumps and bruises. They actually jumped down from the second floor. And these people got some other minor injuries right here. So while our bad guy's doing all this carnage, room 205 was able to successfully lock the door, and he never got in there. So it's a good example of trying to avoid, deny, we're right there, and then they didn't get a chance to do any sort of defense because he ended up killing himself right there in 211. So we look at the Virginia Tech casualties. The very first room he went into, 211, 100% of the people in that room got killed. Not got shot. They didn't get killed, they got shot. But then over here, where we were able to lock the door, nobody got shot. So again, it's a very simple solution that by locking the door, it increases our survivability 100%. What happens when we arrive? This is another question we get a lot. What happens when the police arrive? I ask you to follow our commands, show us your hands, and don't move. So if we get a call, hey, there's a bad guy at the church, gentleman wearing a blue shirt with gray hair. All the wives in here already laughing. They're like, man, that guy's just describing you. Right? So we get that, maybe the bad guy's down, but then I come in and I see, what do I see? Blue shirt, gray hair. Maybe the bad guy's not down. So that's why it's important. You follow our commands, show us your hands, and don't move until you're told to do so. One of the things that I do within the police department is I train police officers how to respond to this stuff. And this is what I teach my officers. Our first priority is to stop the killing. This is a tough pill for people to swallow, but that is our priority. So if you happen to be coming in late to church, which better not happen, right? You happen to be coming late to church and maybe you get shot in the leg, maybe you just fall down and sprain your ankle. It doesn't really matter. But something bad's happening, I'm gonna bypass you. And it's not because you're falling asleep in class. It's not because you have a ticket or because you were speeding. It's not because you didn't buy the police calendar or whatever's going on, right? It's because our objective is to stop this bad guy from killing more people. Once we do that, we're gonna circle around and then we'll come back to stop the dying. We're trained in basic medical stuff. So if we can apply medical, whether it be a tourniquet, a Band-Aid, an ice pack, whatever it is, we'll come back and do it. But that is secondary to stopping this bad guy. And then our ultimate goal is to evacuate you to get to that higher level of care. We're doing some great training right now with our fire department where we're trying to get all casualties, regardless of the number, on their way to a hospital in less than 10 minutes. So we're hitting close to that mark. I think we're averaging about 12 minutes, but it is on the forefront of the fire department and the police department's mind on how we can get anybody, whether it's 1 casualty or 10 casualties, to that next level of care within about 10 minutes. Good example of when police arrive, I think this was in San Bernardino, California. The officers are down there. The bad guy's over here on this T-wing. He's already been put down, and now they're starting to evacuate the building. Police officer says, "Let me see your hands, follow the sound of my voice." They're all walking through, and then they just get let out of the building just like that. As far as medical goes, there is going to be a little bit of a delay between us and EMS. We're trying to narrow that down as much as possible. We're doing training regularly to keep that, but we understand people need help. So now this is where I ask y'all, everybody in the audience, seek additional training. Seek additional medical training. Anybody here know any medical training? Maybe from, what do you do? Okay, so if we come in, Officer Hernandez and I, we put the bad guy down, but now we need some help. People are bleeding out. So we might ask, do you have any medical training? He says, yes, I'm good to go. Sweet, throw this tourniquet on somebody, right? That might happen. It could be that. It might be something as simple as, do you know how to apply pressure? That's an easy one, right? All right, I need you to apply pressure. And that actually does a couple of things. One, it gives us a force multiplier to save lives. But two, as a victim, as a survivor, it overcomes potential PTSD from this survivor syndrome. Because now you're doing something. I didn't just sit there and cower because my church family was getting shot and I didn't do anything. Now I feel terrible. It's, man, I helped save this guy's life. I did everything I could to save this girl's life. Right? So it benefits everybody. There's tons of Stop the Bleed classes out there. We're going to be taking one in March that's joining in with this class. So hopefully we'll be able to start training civilians if they choose to do that down the road. So we can bring in and we'll teach y'all how to put tourniquets on, how to do wound packing, how to put a Band-Aid on, that kind of stuff. But there's tons of Stop the Bleed classes out there that you can benefit. And this is a life skill. So how many of y'all have friends? Like 5. This dude was like, I got a couple of friends. Everybody else says nope. But these are skills that you can help save your friends, right? How many of y'all have kids or grandchildren? Right? So this is, man, when we take our grandkids to the park and one of them falls, what can we do? Right? This is a life skill that can benefit not just in an active attack situation, but in any type of situation. You're going to have, if you're exposed to this, hopefully nobody is, if you're going to exposed to this, you're going to have trauma. That's just what it is. If you have great insurance, maybe you already see a counselor, man, that's awesome. Maybe you have access through your work. Maybe you have access through the church. But use it and expect it to happen. It is very common. So don't be thinking, man, if I'm having nightmares about this 2 weeks later, then I must be, something's wrong with me. No, it is common. Go talk to somebody, get some help. We see it with police officers, the fire department, we see it with fire department, you see it with the military, you see it all across the board. Let's call it what it is and let's address it. This is a program that was started by one of the victims' parents in the Aurora, Colorado theater shooting. In our scenarios today, in our debriefs today, we didn't talk anything about the bad guys short of identifying them as a bad guy. We don't need to. But the people we do want to remember are our heroes, like our teachers that barricaded the doors, our teachers that helped save students, coaches, basketball coaches, volleyball coaches, There are a lot more people out there that we do need to remember other than the bad guys. And we got one more video we're going to show you for our conclusion. Dang it. So this last video, it's a real tearjerker. Oh, man. So usually we set it up just like that, but it's a future news broadcast. And it has a news broadcaster. And she says, this is so-and-so for KSAT 12. I'm at the scene of tomorrow's shooting. And they go around, they interview a teacher. Man, we knew something was wrong with this kid. I've known it since the beginning of the year. They talked to a couple of students. Yeah, we always pick on him, but we didn't think he'd do something like this. We just thought he was weird. They talked to the police officers, and there's a kind of a common theme. And the reporter signs off. Oh, they're also talking to another young lady. How are you going to explain this to your daughter tomorrow? And she says, I won't be able to because my daughter's not going to make it. So then the news reporter says, so-and-so from KSAT 12 on scene from another active shooting that we never saw coming. And it took me a while to realize this, but the more times I saw that, the more I realized all these people, this is going full circle, all these individuals saw those yellow flags and red flags that we talked about at the beginning of class. Nobody said anything. So I conclude tonight's presentation with this. If you see something, say something, please. This is usually where I throw Jake under the bus, but I got to give credit where credit's due. Earlier this year, at the beginning of the school year, y'all may have seen a news article about a mom who got arrested for giving her kid weapons to take to school. That started off as a concern that was brought to Jake. And all it was, hey, something doesn't seem right. Can you look into this? So Jake looked into it, agreed, something doesn't seem right. He escalated it to the next level where mental health got involved, where our fusion center got involved, and sure enough, they ended up arresting mom. I think the day he was supposed to take the guns to school, right? But it all started from a couple of yellow flags. And I say it with this caveat, and I'm gonna step on Jake's toes, this is usually his part, is it's hard to bring this stuff up to us if it's a family member, if it's a friend, if it's a colleague, if it's somebody you've been going to church with for years. Because it's easy to understand, man, the police department's gonna come in, they're gonna arrest John. They're gonna arrest Susie, they're gonna arrest this person. But it doesn't have to get to that point. We have lots of programs that can help get people over whatever depression, anxiety, grievance, whatever it is that they have. We can address that issue before it gets to that point. Does that track with everybody? So don't be thinking that just because you call us that they automatically are going to jail, right? Let's try to address the root cause and get them back on the straight and narrow. That's all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Jake for any closing statements.
No, that's it. It's just, my experience, especially with mental illness, it doesn't discriminate. And I'm sure, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I've seen it in my own family where people just kind of devolve, right? And we don't want to harm them. And that's not our goal all the time as a police department. Yes, we do have punitive measures that we do have to take, but we do have mental health resources. We can execute those warrants, but they do have to, succumb to treatment. Right, and it's just remarkable always when you do have someone that's med compliant versus off meds, and just how that paranoia will spiral. So please utilize us if there is a concern of public safety. Talk amongst each other, share information, talk to your pastor and be like, hey, are you seeing this too? Okay, now we all have, Sergeant Ruby said prior, hey, I didn't know he was drinking so much. I didn't know that he's going through a divorce. Now we're starting to see that big picture. Have you guys seen his social media? He's making these statements. It's just shocking how many times this is broadcasted. There was a shooting in a Walmart in the Midwest, and there was a video where the guy was telling people he's gonna kill his coworkers, and they live streamed it, and they're like, Steven's crazy, right? And he ended up acting on it. Yeah, exactly. So you all have the volition, and we're all stewards of this community. So please utilize us in your leadership and talks amongst yourself. With that being said, man, you love being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It is a sad subject, but hopefully we gave you some way to empower yourself. Just looking amongst you guys, talking to you guys, you can feel the warmth and the joy that is palpable amongst you guys here at the Presbyterian University. So we just thank you so much. Do you guys have any questions for us? Okay, perfect.
Let me just clarify real quick before we ask questions. I just want everybody to know that we do have, and this is for the officers to know as well, we do have keypad locks on every single door. And in fact, I've been checking it out while we've been in this, training. All of these doors are currently locked. The only one that is unlocked is the admin rear door. That's so that people can get to the bathroom. But we did recently program all the sanctuary doors are locked Sunday mornings from 10:35 to 11:30 a.m. And so there is no external access to the sanctuary. We worship here at 10:30. So we lock all of these doors. We ask our greeters to stay in the narthex during worship so that if people need to get back in, or if parents are coming in, or people come in late, which, shame on them. However, we do want our greeters to stay in the narthex to open the door for people if they do come in late, but these doors are all locked on Sunday morning during worship. The rest of the time, the doors are open on Sunday morning so that people can get in, in and out of Sunday school or that sort of thing. We do lock on Sunday mornings. We have childcare downstairs through this gate, and that is locked at all times. And so parents need a specific Sunday morning code to get into the childcare area. And that is also something that we've implemented. And then all of our doors during the week are locked regularly. So all of our preschool classrooms, every door on the campus is locked throughout the day, and everybody has their own individual code to get into the doors. So we have a record of who comes in and at what times, but that's at least one easy, can't get through a locked door method of safety that we have implemented here on campus. Okay, I'll let you take questions.
Okay, yes.
What is the non-emergency phone number to express concerns? The yellow, the caution, the concern about a particular individual without calling 911.
Right, exactly. So it's 210-207 SAPD or 7273. SAPD 7273 on a dial tone for everything underneath short of an emergency. Again, you can also utilize your safe officer. Just plug in your address online through the city of San Antonio. It'll show you what officer is and what their cell phone number is. Do both. Just get some type of documentation. Get the word out. You can always use us as a follow-up too. Let's say that we're not available. It's after hours. We typically don't work that late into the evening. But let's say you find some information out at 2 in the morning. You want an officer to take a report. Send me a text or whoever your safe officer is the following morning, and we can touch base. And that's kind of what happened in that whole school scenario. I was off work, and I had taken the concern earlier. I had a few buddies that were on B shift, the evening shift, that started texting me like, hey, did you handle this earlier? Yeah, I did. What information do you have? And that's kind of the cool thing about our office is that we get to be a liaison to all these other entities within the department.